I couldn't catch it when the market was already heating up, right? You remember that time period where COVID was going on, the market's heating up, and I'm like,
Yep.
why can I not find consistency? So anyways, I dropped my risk to $2 per trade. Every trade I took, that was huge for me. I was like, it's process over profits. I can make a small, yes, process over profits 100%.
Welcome back, everybody, to Be the Trader. Today, I have a very, very special guest. And in fact, I say that every time because everyone I bring on the show, I love to bring on the show, and they're special to me. But what I'll tell you about this young man is I had a relationship with him for a while. And while he was trying to find his own consistency. And if you don't know who he is, you need to look him up. His name is Bryce Tuohey. He's been trading for quite some time, and he finally found his own strategy, his own style. And what's interesting about this young man is he never gave up. He went through some hard bumps. I've been talking to him through that entire time, and it was just so cool to see him develop. So Bryce, it's awesome to have you on the show, man. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, we definitely have quite a long history. It's really cool to see it's just so cool to see how everything's like changed for the better for both of us. You know what I mean? I mean, we're both really doing good things in my opinion. And I'm just really happy to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. And also I forgot to mention, like, Bryce Tuohey used to be the co-host of Beyond the PDT too, which is a show that kind of inspired me to start my own show, which is so cool. So it's just cool how everything just comes around. So let's get started. For those who don't know who you are, Bryce, tell us what got you started in trading, and let's go from there.
Okay, so basically what got me started in trading, I'm going to bring it way back. I'm going to bring it back freshman year of college. You know, all I knew is that I was like, I hate working my like minimum wage job. And I was like, there's got to be something better to do than this. And I was like, all right, what am I good at? And the first thing that came to mind was writing. And so I was like, how do I make money doing this? And I just started Googling, and I started doing freelance writing for free for a while, like basically 6 months of free work just to build up a portfolio. And then, that was my source of income throughout a decent amount of college. And then I met Matt Monaco, who was my other co-host on Beyond the PDT. He became my roommate, and he was talking to me about stocks and how he was getting into the penny stock market. And I was like, that's interesting. I was like, how about this? If you can like teach me a little bit about trading, if you want like a relatively consistent source of income, I'll teach you how to write. Like we'll hook each other up. And we did that. He started helping me learn how to trade penny stocks. And now this was back, oh man, sophomore year of college. Oh, wow, that's so bad. Late 2017. It was late 2017 that I was introduced to it. And, right when you catch that bug, all you want to do is like trade, like learn how to trade. And so that's what I'm doing, right? Like I'm just studying things. I didn't have enough money to put in, like enough money for what I felt was right to put into an account. So I was like, I'll just study a bunch of videos and stuff. And then I got bored of it in like a month, right? And so this is going into 2018. And then I kind of it piqued my interest again, because I was living with Matt early 2018. He's always talking about his trading still. I was like, all right, I'm going to give it another try. So I just did that same thing again. And throughout most of 2018, I just studied. Like I was studying my butt off. It felt like I was studying my butt off. I felt like I was putting in a bunch of work. I wasn't really putting in that much work, but I had a small account. I was taking little trades, taking little losses, and then start fast forwarding. Basically every month I was putting in slightly more work. 2019 came around, which was debatably one of the slowest markets we've seen in a while, which was probably a good thing that I had a pretty small account for that, because I would have been just clicking every button I could. And all the while I'm still writing, which is basically what helped me build up the funds to get to my account when I got over the PDT. And then, like you said, started that podcast because I wanted to learn more for myself. We talked to basically newer traders who were starting to make a come up, who were starting to find that consistency. And that helped me a lot. It made a lot of great connections. And again, we were helping other people too, which I know is why you love to do this show. It's a great feeling being able to give back just lessons that you learn, even if you're not killing it right away. Like for me, it was, okay, I'm learning something and I'm helping other people learn something. Anyways, end of 2019 comes around. It's like, all right, I'm coming up on graduating college. Like, and I'm not successful trading yet. I need to start really taking this seriously. And basically by the end of 2019, early 2020, I started putting in probably 8 or 9, up to 10 hours a day. I was like, okay, I'm going to start really learning here. I was still taking basically small trades here and there. And then I think it was in March or April of 2020. So of like basically a year ago from now, I was like, I need to put so much time into this that it's not funny. Like I know the basics and everything. I need to know a little bit more. And it became like an obsession at that point where I was putting in 12, 13 hours a day. Like that was all I did. I blew off school to do this. You know what I mean? Like it was just so much work. And by it was May 15th. I remember this date. I couldn't catch a win. The market was already heating up, right? You remember that time period where COVID was going on, the market's heating up. And I'm like, Why can I not find consistency? So anyways, I dropped my risk to $2 per trade. Every trade I took, that was huge for me. I was like, it's process over profits. I can make a small, process over profits 100%.
Dude, we talked about this too during that time period. Like you were like, yo, what should I do? I was like, yo, just pretend you're not making, like just trade where you're not, doesn't matter. And that's what you did, dude.
Well, and that's always my biggest thing when people ask, like, how do I get into this? Is like, you need to make it not about the money. Because if you lose $2 on a trade, you don't care. Mm-hmm. If you lose $100 on a small account, you really care. And so that $2 per trade, that risk, the first month after May 15th is when I was like, I'm going to stick to one strategy. I'm not going to use a bunch of crap that I don't know anything about. I'm just going to trade listed breakouts, and that's it. And by the end of the month, I made $87. And I was like, this is so cool. Like I made money. And basically from there, I just kept scaling up. I was like, all right, $2 is a very it's a practice risk. So I moved it up to like $15 in June, I think I made $1,000 in June, moved it up to $20 in July, made like 4,000. And from there, it's just been, I'm not going to say straight up, but I just kept increasing my risk as I felt comfortable in my process. I've definitely added some strategies to my tool belt, but I've really, really worked on getting better entries, better exits, which has allowed me to use that same strategy and get that risk a lot better, a lot tighter, without necessarily needing to size up massive, which is kind of my entire story there in a nutshell.
That's awesome, man. You know what's cool is, first off, everyone who's listening, you need to rewind what he just said, because this man went from a $2 risk or whatever, $3 risk, and then he went to 10 and 15. And when he was risking 15, he's still making some good money with a $15 risk for the month. And that's what you need to know. Everyone has this notion that if I trade big, I'll make big, but I used to think that too. And I'm sure you did too, Bryce.
Oh, yeah.
I think over time you start to realize that it's having the right entry at the right place so you can size it appropriately, and you can risk small amount but make big return. And it's ridiculous how possible that is. And I love that you also said that now you're honing in more on improving your accuracy, right, of your entries. And that's what's interesting. Like once you find consistency, because you found it, it's not like game over, like, oh, I'm killing it, I'm done. It's now you're faced a whole different challenges. Now you're faced with, how do I eliminate the losers that are unnecessary? How do I improve the winners? And it's fun. It's cool to hear that you're starting to focus on that. Let me ask you this. When you start to find that consistency, you said you were looking at breakouts. Is that listed or OTC? Like which one was it first when you first started?
So when I first started, because I was
small.
Yeah. And since my size was so small, I knew I could not, it wouldn't make sense to do OTC breakouts, even though OTCs were heating up. And I was like, oh, this would be so nice. Like, I just stuck completely to listeds. Basically anything under $3 was game for me. It had to be a really small company because, even when I'm trading a $1 stock, I was taking like 20 shares. You know what I mean? Because for me, it was wider risk then. It was wider risk going for a bigger move. And that was essentially what I was going for.
So are you telling me, so you found the consistency with listed stocks, right? Mm-hmm. And then when did you start to branch out into OTCs?
I really didn't start branching out into OTCs till like November.
Okay.
It took a while. And even now, like I'm definitely comfortable trading them, but that's not even though this is going to be funny, but I'm comfortable taking big size on it because you can, if you get in on a dip, your risk reward is generally really strong. The issue is I'm not necessarily comfortable holding them for long enough yet. You know what I mean? I still sell way too early. It's something I'm working on, even though the OTC market is kind of starting to show some signs of weakness. And that's obviously one of the biggest issues, in my opinion, with the OTC market as a whole, is that it's really only hot when it's hot.
Yeah, it's cyclical. It's definitely a seasoned business, OTCs. Mm-hmm. but it's been hot lately. And so what's interesting is a lot of people, I want you to know, Bryce is a long bias trader. He trades breakouts. And how many times, Bryce, I'm sure you've heard this, and I hear all the time, breakouts don't work. Breakouts don't work. They're garbage. Tell me why right now. Tell the listeners why right now breakouts don't work for them.
My opinion is normally because you're chasing the breakout. My whole thing, and it didn't used to be this way, and it depends on what you define a breakout as. Are you talking about a daily chart breakout? Or are you talking about an intraday breakout? For me, if you can time it on the intraday before the daily breakout happens, your risk reward is a lot better. If you're buying the daily breakout, yeah, it's probably going to stop and you're going to get scared because you have to have such wide risk that unless it really continues and proves to be one of the strongest stocks of the day, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
It really is. Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, it depends on where you're buying and what type of breakout really is. Is it on the daily or intraday? So for yourself, did you really start to see, because I'm sure you used to buy the daily first, right? The daily breakout. And then you experienced the stuff all the time too?
So back when I had that $2 risk and I was trading listed breakouts, I was actually, kind of doing what I'm doing now. And I was buying in before that daily breakout actually happened most times. Normally it was actually very simple. It's like an ascending triangle pattern, you know what I mean? Where it's testing. And that was working so well in over the summer. And then because every penny, there were just so many sub-dollar listed runners that would form that ascending triangle. And then all of a sudden, once it almost seemed like to me, once they got up higher in price, that ascending triangle either didn't work as much or didn't come up as much. And that's when I was like, okay, I got to reapproach this a little bit. And so I did. But even then, I wasn't necessarily buying the daily breakout, which is kind of surprising because that is how most newer traders start.
That's true.
And that might have been because I'd been studying for 2 years before that, so I noticed right away. Like I noticed over those periods of times, like okay, the breakout doesn't work that well. If you're buying in the wrong spot.
So what's the advice then for people to know? Because if someone's probably listening, they're like, well, if you're buying before, it's not a breakout. So you're trying to predict. So what's a good tip or someone who's listening in to look out for when they're like, okay, I see a breakout coming. What should they be looking for?
Oh, that's it. And it's definitely situational.
Sure.
But for me, I either want to see really strong bid support. Now that's a little bit maybe more advanced than some people are looking for, but when you see dips getting bought up on the intraday, pretty consistently, or dips. I say bids or dips. When I see dips getting bought up on the intraday, really strong with a lot of bid support, it looks like it's probably going to go higher. Now, if I'm looking at the daily chart and, maybe it's again, situational, but if I see it, showing signs of increasing volume on the daily chart leading up to the breakout, that's big for me. You know what I mean? Like, especially we'll get into this in a little bit. I'm not always trading the highest volume breakout plays by any means, but when I'm playing a really strong daily chart, I want that volume to be increasing up to the breakout. Or if it's not necessarily, and it's just kind of consolidating up there, it needs to be a lot of volume on the day of the breakout. Like if you see the past 2 days hasn't done a whole lot of volume, but it's consolidating near the breakout level, and then by like 10 o'clock, it's already done the same amount of volume as it did the day before, there's interest there. There's interest. There's a lot of different factors. Yeah. And it's
that's
one of those
what
things.
I love. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. And I mean, it's hard to teach every different situation. You know what I mean? And that's why it's really rare to see an overnight success because you need to experience it first. You need to go through and either look back through a bunch of them or experience a bunch of them to see what works for you.
And that you just nailed it on the head. So that's what I love that you just said that, because first off, you did a lot of explanations. Some people are probably like, oh my God, there's different ways. And that's how important it is. Like when you're trading, the problem is a lot of us think it's so simple, and trading isn't simple. It can be over time whenever you start to remember all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's hard to remember it all and retain it and remember the whole picture. But what Bryce is basically telling you in a nutshell is he needs confluence. He needs multiple things lining up for him to get confidence, to get into a position, to be prepared for potential breakout. There's so many things that happen. And then maybe to get in after a breakout, same situation. But there's so many things he's looking for. And every stock, every ticker is a little unique in itself. We'll look at the history. How has it acted before? So I appreciate you going into that, because when you started answering, I was like, man, that's so many answers. And it's true. That's how things are. Everything is different. When I'm shorting, it's always a kind of a different, unique scenario. There's similarities, but we're looking at different, unique scenarios at the end of the day. But let me ask you this, man. What would you say was the biggest aha moment for you? Because when you started trading at $2, $3 risk, please tell me, like, what happened when you were like, oh crap, I got this? Like, what was holding you back, and when were you finally able to overcome?
Oh, that's so hard, because whenever I get asked this, I always say it was a bunch of little aha moments that added up. To me, there wasn't one big one, but I think again, and I will repeat this until the day I die. One of the most important things for me was realizing to not worry about the money, because if you have the right risk and you're, like that $2 risk, the money didn't matter. Like I wasn't trading for the money. And for me, I guess those little aha moments adding up together was increasing risk in a way that I felt comfortable while still being able to take the trade for the quality of the trade. Because when there are times you branch out from your strategy and it doesn't work and you're like, why did I do that? But if you keep that same risk that you've been doing successfully with the successful strategy, it's not going to matter. All you do is say that doesn't work for me, or I'm doing it wrong. So I guess, really the biggest aha moment, because again, to me, that was May. That was May when I made $87, was like my first real one. And it was just process over profits.
Yes.
But, I will say, and I know you had Dan Irish on this show not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
He really helped me reapproach my breakout strategy, really helped me reapproach the risk reward aspect of it. And again, finding better entry spots. And to me, learning different intraday patterns that correlate with daily patterns, that was huge for me too. Because a lot of times, and again, it is very situational. The daily chart is very situational, but after you see it enough, you're like, wait a minute, this happened the same way on a different stock I traded a week ago. And then again, and it's all that refining. So from there, being able to reapproach an intraday breakout strategy, that was probably my biggest aha moment I can think of besides process over profits.
Nice. And how did you connect with Dan? Because I know people are probably like, man, I can't find people to talk to like that. How did that happen for you?
For me, it was Beyond the PDT. He was one of the guys that, he was very early in his stage. He was down, basically a few months before we talked to him, and he started, and again, this is 2019. This is a slow market. He started building up his track record. He became profitable. I think he was maybe profitable like $30,000 or $40,000. And I think he might've been down, 10 to 20. And, so he was just starting to come up. And he basically was like, you guys saw something in me, and, if I would love to help. And so that's, to me, another big lesson is branch out in ways that you don't just slide into someone's Twitter DMs and be like, hey, help me. Because if they don't know you, they're probably, and that's all you're asking. But to me, it was, providing that value for other people. While it did help me, it also helped me make those connections. I'm not saying you need to go start a podcast, but do something that is, helpful to other people than just yourself, and people will be more willing to help you in the long run.
I agree 100%. And I think, that could be as little as, here's a quick tip. If you, let's just say if someone was following you, Bryce, and every time you posted, they gave you kudos, or they constantly gave you good feedback or analyze your trade and said, I really love how you, and they got detailed, really good response, not just good job, that stands out. It does stand out, everyone. When people comment on my show, your comments stand out when it's a detailed comment. And I remember you, and I promise you it's the same way with everyone else out there. And that's how you can build relationships too. Or you can create a show. You can definitely create a show.
Well, and that's funny you say that. There's a couple people who generally, because when I post, how I did for the day, I always post charts with it, because I want people to maybe see what I saw, or, especially when I mess up, here's how I messed up. And a lot of times there is a very few select people who will respond, great job, blah, blah, blah. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And when I have the time, I answer. But again, like you said, they stick out to me. I remember those people because they're the same people asking and I don't even care about the congratulations. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for people to essentially ask questions other than what's your broker? And when when it's repeated, when it was repetitive, you remember that person.
Amen to that. I agree with that. And so I want to know something real quick, Bryce.
Yeah.
Because you were trading, 2017, 18, and then now you finally hit your stride, really. What's the difference, man? Like, is it just because you started focusing on process, or is it just because what was your struggle at the beginning? Was it because you didn't really know what you didn't know in terms of setups, or was it because you were focused on money?
There's so many factors. One of the biggest ones, work ethic. Absolutely work ethic. Like I said earlier, you know what I mean? I'm going basically from end of 2019 to early 2020 and was when I was like, I need to take this seriously. And I was just putting in so much time based on stuff that I had already learned, because again, I was still studying, just not as consistently. It wasn't every day. It wasn't my entire day. And then that fortunately lined up with the hottest market I've ever seen ever. It was a great example of being at the right place at the right time with enough preparation.
Yes. And
I'd say those together.
I think something that you don't give yourself credit for is you persevere, dude. You persevere so much, dude. Like, you persevere so much, like, because there were times, tell people about the times where you thought you had it, and then all of a sudden, boom, right? Remember those times?
Yeah.
Someone's doing that right now. They're saying, God, I thought I had it, Bryce. I've been doing it for like 2-3 months, killing it, and then they lose it all in about a week or maybe one day. What do you tell those people?
For me, when I was going through those times, like, I've got it nailed down. I know, like, I got it all in the bag. I'm going to be a millionaire. And then you take that one trade and you're like, I just lost 3 weeks of gains. The biggest thing is, you probably haven't seen that setup enough yet. And you need to keep practicing it with small size, with appropriate, and this might come off the wrong way, but when you have such a small account, it is so important to take risk seriously. And I'm not saying it's not important when you have a big account, but you can essentially afford to slip up a little bit, because you can correct yourself in the future and say, that was wrong. I need to refocus on this. When you have a small account, one bad trade can really blow you up. And that's not to say, again, you can get caught in a halt up that goes up 100%, a halt down if you're a long that goes down 80% at COUV, C-O-U-V. But I'm just saying, like, when you're using a small account, you're probably going to be using a larger percentage of your account per trade because you have to. And that's, again, let's go all the way back. Keep that small risk in mind. And then you can afford to make those mistakes when you think that you have it, because you're able to just keep testing it. It doesn't take, for me, sorry, this is a long answer here, but it's important. I think it's really important. For me, when I thought I had it, it was after like 10 trades. And then the 11th trade was what blew me up. You need to take more than 10 trades. You need to take more than 20. You need a month, 2 months, 3 months of consistency on one pattern before you can really think like, okay, maybe now it's time to start sizing up on it or taking this strategy more seriously, yada, yada, yada. That's my advice. All that together, put that all together, and eventually you will find what works for you, even if it's not what you thought it was.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that. And you know what? I want to ask you this though too. And I think actually I ask you this, but I'll point this out. You actually just said that you just haven't had enough time yet with that strategy. And that's so important. And because there's people out there listening right now who are trading one setup and they've only traded for a month and give it up and they try another one. And I think what you just said is key. Like, you got to practice a setup for a while so you can get it correctly, because it takes a long time to actually learn how to plan, execute a plan well, stick with the plan. And I think sticking with one setup for a long time can help you with all of that and then teach you like really good habits. But not only that, but you yourself, 2017, 18, 19, 20, I mean, that's 3 years before you start to get your consistency of screen time. Even if you weren't really studying like you said you were looking at screens still a lot, dude. And that's something to be said, because a lot of people, they don't understand, like, you're the human body. And I know you can agree with this. Like, we pick up patterns naturally. Like, we just look at charts. I look at charts all the time now, just like you, and we'll see charts that like, oh my God, that looks totally familiar. And it just hits you like that. And over time, if you do this, you can survive. Like Bryce said, trade small with a small account. Don't risk too much. So you can survive long enough so you can see good setups. And over time, you'll learn how to trade them. And then over time, you'll be like, maybe if I try this, and you experiment. And this whole game is experimentation. And Bryce ended with saying, you may find out things that you had no idea that you were going to like your trading style would completely change? Because I know Bryce's changed over time. Mine's completely different than what it used to be. And you got to be flexible and don't be closed-minded like I was in the beginning. So don't be closed-minded. But let me ask you this, man. I want to know when it comes to like now, because I asked you earlier what it was like whenever you were thinking you had it and then you lost it. What's the difference now? Because now you're doing well. And I don't know about you, but for me, I can honest with you, there was times where I still thought like I was scared that was going to happen. So I'm curious, did that ever come to you? And if not, why? And if it did, how'd you handle it?
So here's the thing is that, again, I mentioned this, we are in such a hot market, which is kind of starting to slow down. And, my trading has slowed down because of that. But trading is a game of adaptation. Those who can adapt will thrive. You can't rely on one pattern, one strategy, one setup for the entirety of your career, because that strategy will not work the same a year from now, 2 years from now. And that's where, like you were just saying, the screen time become important because you pick up those patterns, other patterns that are working subconsciously, and you start seeing, okay, well, this has been working lately. Let me try a little bit of this, and maybe use small size to to try it out. And then that is now not only a new strategy and new setup that you have, but you also have that strategy that worked for you for so long. When it comes back, when it works better, and we talked earlier, the OTC market is cyclical. The entire market is cyclical in a way that listeds aren't always hot. Breakouts fail when the market is slower, and that's when I'm not going to be trading breakouts. I might start learning to get short bias when that market slows down. And I definitely, actually, I shouldn't say I might, I will, because again, trading is a game of adaptation. And so that's the biggest thing is, like, for me anyways, is whenever I think, okay, I don't want to go through this period where I think I know it all, because right now, my strategy works well, but when it doesn't, I will adapt.
Yes.
So I guess that's what I always tell myself when it's like, will this keep working? Probably not. So keep learning, keep putting in that screen time, and you will notice other patterns.
That's true. I think that's so true. I think because it happened to me where I was finding consistency with one pattern, and then it just kind of disappeared for like 2-3 months.
I remember you talking to me. Yes, I remember you talking about
and I would trade like once every 3 weeks. It was so bad. And if you're curious about that, I talk about that on Be the Trader on the solo episodes. I talk about all that experience, but I started to adapt. And then that was a blessing because now I trade all kinds of different setups. And I think that's what's key is if you can survive and find something that works, while it works, try another setup. And like Bryce said earlier, maybe try smaller on that other setup. So that way you don't ruin your confidence, because confidence is important. And I know that confidence is so important to execute your trades. But look, Bryce, before we start to wrap this up, I want to ask you a couple of things. Number one, I want to ask you, is there any question that you feel like people ask you in regards to longing that you feel like you can highlight right now for others who may be thinking it, and I'm just not good at thinking that question out loud? Like, is there anything that long people are always asking you that maybe I haven't asked?
Yeah, and so I'm gonna have to give you like another little detailed answer here. Sure. So my long strategy, one of my favorite ones right now, is actually a very low volume strategy. I'm looking to get in before that volume comes in, because a lot of times you can see it in level 2 and the daily chart lines up with it, and you can start seeing them trying to gain attention to it, trying to bid prop it up, trying to keep it down at key levels, and right before they let it break through. A lot of people like, this traded 20,000 shares a minute ago. How did you why did you get into that? And to answer that, or even how did you find it? For me, I keep a list of every massive runner on this massive watch list. So I'm checking through them every day. I've got 100, 200 stocks that I like, that I know how they, I won't say that I know how all of them trade, but I'm looking through them. I'm looking, okay, is there one that's up today that shouldn't, has no real reason to be up today? And I'll check the volume for it. I'll check the level 2. I'll check key areas. People seem to think that trading is simple once you have, the right strategy, the right process, the right mindset, but it's not easy. I would never say it's easy, because I still put in 12 hours a day looking at charts, reviewing my trades, finding more potential plays. It's a lot. Like everyone's always just asking me, how did you find that? Where did you find it? I looked through a lot of charts, a lot of charts. And if you go through my Twitter, you'll see some of these trades where it's like there's no volume being traded and then it just surges up. So that's probably the most common question I get is, how did you find that?
That's awesome, man. I love that you said that because I never talk about that, but you're so on the money. It's like I have a list of just tons of stocks that I look through at least once a day or maybe every other day, just go real quick. It's quick now, but I go through each one real quick just to see if anything stands out. And if it does, it's on my radar for the next day. And so that's a great tip, dude. I'm glad you said that and don't ask Bryce, give me that list. No, what you need to do is start tracking. They happen every day. Go put GME on your list, put AMC. Like it may never happen again, but they ran up. That's why I long GME on 49. Bryce was looking at long in GME. I think he did too. Is because the fact is it ran once before. So put it on that long list. So thanks for saying that, man. And where is some place that if anyone has any questions that want to reach out to you, where can they find you, my man?
For trading related stuff, I'd say probably the first place is my Twitter. The app is Trader Bryce. I do my best to respond, although like I've been on Twitter a lot less recently, but when I see something, I will absolutely respond to it. I also have a TikTok that I started, the trading TikTok. That's also Trader Bryce. I've been responding to a lot of people on there.
Okay, cool.
So if you want to check that out, you can also, I respond to those people a lot in the DMs.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, my man. It was such a great time to talk with you and just catch up with you and just share people with you, share everyone your journey, because it just feels like it was yesterday, Bryce. It really feels like it was yesterday. And I'm so happy for you, man. I'm proud of you. And just thanks for being here, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me on. Like you said, it really does. Like time has flown by. Time really has flown by. So thanks for having me on. I'm glad we got to catch up and share this with everybody. And like I said, any questions, reach out on Twitter, reach out on TikTok apparently now. And yeah, thanks, Alex.
Awesome.